Tessa Albright dropped her overstuffed duffel bag on the floor of her ocean view room and let out a long breath, half relief, half disbelief. She hadn't taken a vacation in 3 years, and now here she was, standing barefoot on the polished hardwood floor of the Seacliff Haven Resort, where the balcony doors opened to the sound of crashing waves and the scent of salt in the air. She didn't come here looking for anything other than space to breathe. After quitting her job at a marketing firm that drained the life out of her and ending a relationship with a man who barely noticed when she left, Tessa had booked this seaside escape on a whim. 1 room, 4 nights. No expectations. She didn't expect the breakfast buffet to change her life. It happened on the 2nd morning. She'd woken up late, barely tamed her curls into a ponytail, and pulled on the first sundress she could find. The restaurant overlooked the sea, all glass and linen and soft jazz in the background. She grabbed a plate and moved toward the omelet station, eyes still half asleep. "Try the mango juice," said a deep voice next to her. "They squeeze it fresh every morning." Tessa turned her head and paused. The man beside her was tall, dressed in a crisp white button-down with the sleeves casually rolled. His dark hair was just tousled enough to look effortless, and his jawline could have been carved from stone. But what got her was his eyes, clear blue, focused entirely on her like he'd been waiting for her to show up. "I wasn't sure if I was being helpful or just creepy," he added with a small grin, "but you looked like you needed someone to speak first." Tessa blinked, caught off guard. "That obvious?" he chuckled. "You walked into a 5-star seaside resort buffet like you just survived a tornado." She gave a breathy laugh, then poured herself the mango juice. "Tessa," she said, holding out her hand. "Yarden Boone," he replied, shaking it. His palm was warm, his grip firm but not overpowering. They ended up sitting together on the sun-drenched terrace, plates full of eggs and fruit. Tessa told him about her chaotic ex-job, her even worse ex-boyfriend, and how she'd driven 6 hours just to hear the ocean and not have anyone need something from her. Yarden, in return, told her almost nothing. He asked questions instead: what she liked to do when no one was watching, if she always ordered 2 croissants and never finished them, why she hadn't smiled until she took her first sip of mango juice. He was charming, smart, and magnetic in a way she hadn't experienced in years, if ever. But still, something about him felt polished, controlled. After an hour she stood. "Thanks for breakfast and the juice tip." "You're welcome," he said, standing too. She didn't expect to see him again, but she did. The next morning he was already seated at the same table, waiting. "You're late," he said with a teasing glint. "You're early. I'm consistent." He motioned to the chair beside him. "Join me," and she did. What started as an accidental meal turned into a ritual. Every morning, the two of them, Tessa in another casual dress, Yarden always looking like he stepped out of a magazine, would share coffee, eggs, and conversation that wandered from silly to serious with no warning. By the 4th morning, she found herself looking for him before grabbing her plate. And when he wasn't in his usual spot, her stomach actually dropped. But as she sat with her food, disappointed, he appeared behind her, holding out a single white daisy. "Miss me?" he asked. She rolled her eyes, taking the flower. "You're ridiculous. You missed me," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Admit it." She looked down at the daisy, fighting a smile, maybe a little. Later that afternoon, they walked along the beach. The sun was warm, the breeze cool, and her hand brushed against his more than once accidentally, then not so accidentally. "So, what do you do when you're not charming strangers at seaside resorts?" she asked as they paused near the edge of the water. Yarden hesitated for the first time since she'd met him. "I run a company, tech. It's boring stuff." She raised an eyebrow. "You're being vague." "Because the minute I say what I do, people change. I'm not people," she said without thinking. He looked at her, then really looked at her like something shifted behind his eyes. "No, you're not." That night, he invited her to dinner off the resort grounds. "I know a place," he said, quiet, amazing seafood. "You'll love it." He picked her up in a sleek black Range Rover that gleamed under the moonlight. Tessa's eyes widened. "Rental?" she asked hopefully. He grinned. "Not exactly." The restaurant was tucked into a cliffside, candlelit with a view of the water. Their table was private, intimate. She wore a blue sundress this time. He wore a tailored navy blazer over a white tee. It was casual but expensive casual. Halfway through dinner, after a shared bottle of Sauvignon Blanc, she set down her fork. "Yarden, who are you really?" He leaned back, his jaw tight. "I own Boone Tech." "It's a software company," she blinked. "Wait, Boone Tech, the one that—" "Yes," she stared at him, stunned. "You're Yarden Boone. As in the billionaire CEO that Forbes keeps writing about." "I was hoping you'd find out later," he said, his voice soft. "But I didn't want to lie." Tessa sat back, stunned. "You're a billionaire," he watched her closely. "Does that change anything?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. "It should have, but it didn't." "I don't care how much money you have," she said finally. "Just don't lie to me again." His expression changed, like he hadn't realized he was holding his breath until then. "I won't." After dinner, he walked her back to her room. The moonlight danced across the ocean, and her heartbeat was too loud in her chest. He stopped at her door. "I don't usually do this," he said, "but I really don't want to say goodnight." She looked up at him. "Then don't." He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was the kind of kiss that made time stop, made her forget everything but the way his hands cupped her face and how his lips felt like home. When they pulled apart, breathless, he whispered against her lips, "You're not just a vacation for me, Tess." And for the first time in a long time, Tessa believed in possibilities again. She didn't come here looking for anything. But somehow, she'd found something she never expected, something that felt a lot like the start of falling. Tessa stood on the balcony of her room, the salty breeze tugging at the hem of her silk robe as the sky faded from rose gold to lavender. Below, the gentle hush of waves played beneath the hum of distant music drifting from the beach bar. She should have felt relaxed, tranquil even. But her heart hadn't stopped racing since the moment Yarden told her the truth. Boone Tech. She hadn't lied when she said it didn't change anything. But it did complicate everything. A soft knock at her door pulled her back from the edge of her thoughts. She turned, heart skipping once, then again when she opened the door and saw him standing there in a charcoal sweater and dark jeans, holding a pair of worn leather-bound notebooks. "I didn't want to leave things hanging," he said, voice low. "Can I come in?" She stepped aside without thinking. He set the notebooks on the small table by the window. "I brought these because I want you to know who I really am. Not what a press release says." Tessa crossed her arms, watching him as he moved toward the window, backlit by the last light of day. "You could have told me from the beginning." "I could have," he agreed, turning to face her. "But I liked being just a guy with you. Not a headline." She walked toward the table and flipped open the top notebook. Inside were sketches, dozens of them. Buildings, parks, product designs, even a few quick portraits, all drawn in black ink, detailed and alive. "You draw," she said quietly. "I used to want to be an architect," he said, stepping beside her. "But I got pulled into tech during college, started something in my dorm room, everything else followed." She ran her fingers lightly over a sketch of a narrow stone bridge crossing over a stream. "You still sketch like it matters." "It does," he said. "Just not to anyone who knows me as Boone Tech CEO." She turned to him. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you don't look at me like I'm a balance sheet," he said simply. "And because I can't stop thinking about what this might be." Tessa's breath caught. "What exactly do you think this is?" "I think I'm in trouble," he said, voice rougher now. "Because I haven't stopped replaying last night in my head since I left your door." The tension between them stretched tight, electric. "Then why didn't you call this morning?" she asked, her voice softer now but steady. "You're always there for breakfast." "Today you weren't." He looked down, jaw tense. "I had to take a call. My CFO tracked me down. There's a board meeting coming up. They're watching everything I do. Even who you have breakfast with." He didn't smile. "You'd be surprised." She took a step back, needing space. "So what happens when you leave here, Yarden? When the board meetings and investors and shareholders take over again, he crossed the room in 2 strides. I want you to come with me. Tessa froze. He continued. Not forever, just to New York a few days. I want to show you my world and not the one in Forbes. The real one. The one where I wake up too early, eat dinner at 10 at night, and sketch in the margins of meeting agendas because I need to feel something real. She stared at him, stunned. You're serious. As a heart attack, she exhaled, pacing once. I can't just drop everything. You said you don't have a job waiting. That doesn't mean I'm ready to be flown across the country by someone I've known for 5 days. Then don't think of it like that, he said. Think of it as seeing if this, whatever this is, has a shot outside of perfect sunsets and ocean air. She glanced at the notebooks again. They weren't for show. They were raw, personal, real in a way she hadn't expected from someone like him. I need to think, she said. He nodded once. I'll be at the fire pit near the pool, if you decide you want s'mores and answers. She watched him leave, the door clicking softly behind him. Tessa didn't move for a long time. The next morning, she found him sitting on the sand before sunrise, bare feet buried in the cool grains, a coffee cup balanced in his hands. You're early, she said, stepping up beside him. I couldn't sleep, Yarden said, standing. Didn't want to miss you again. She looked up at him, the first rays of orange light catching in his eyes. I'll come, she said, to New York. Relief swept across his face, but he didn't reach for her. Instead, he said, there's something I need to tell you before we leave. Tessa stiffened. What? He hesitated. There's someone I used to be, someone I buried under billion-dollar meetings and headlines. But if I'm serious about this, about you, I don't want to hide that anymore. She narrowed her eyes slightly. Are we talking about some deep, dark secret or just a bad haircut phase? He didn't laugh. I was engaged once, he said. She died 2 years ago, car accident. And for a long time I stopped letting anyone close. Tessa's heart shifted, heavy and aching for a man she didn't even know existed until this week. I'm not asking you to fix anything, he said. I just need you to know. I didn't expect to feel this drawn to someone again. Let alone now. She stepped closer, placing her hand over his. Thank you for telling me. I'm not afraid of your past, but I need to know you're not running from it by chasing something new. I'm not running, he said. I think for the first time in years I'm trying to stay. He laced his fingers through hers. The sun rose slowly behind them, casting gold over the water. Tessa didn't know what waited for her in New York, but she knew she wanted to find out with him. The black SUV eased through the gates of a glass tower that scraped the sky. Tessa's breath caught as she looked up through the windshield, the building rising like a monument of steel and ambition. Welcome to my least favorite place, Yarden said from the driver's seat, eyes flicking toward her with something between apology and challenge. Then why bring me here first? Because if you can stand this part of my world, the rest will feel easier. The elevator ride to the penthouse was silent. Not tense, just charged with the kind of anticipation that made her stomach twist. When the doors opened, what greeted her wasn't a cold, corporate bachelor pad. It was warm light, wood floors, and walls lined with books and art, not prints but originals. The kind of space that belonged to someone who still remembered how to live, even if most of the world only saw numbers beside his name. Your place smells like cedar and espresso, Tessa said, stepping inside. Unexpected. I like waking up to it, he replied, setting down his keys. I had the kitchen redone last year just so I could install that espresso machine. She turned toward the wall of windows stretching across the far end of the room. The view was staggering Central Park in the distance, the city moving beneath them like a living thing. I didn't think you'd actually come, he said behind her. I didn't think I would either. She turned. But I meant it on the beach. I want to see where this goes. Yarden didn't respond immediately. Instead, he walked to the table and picked up a small envelope. This came while we were away. I wasn't sure if I should open it. What is it? He handed it to her. The handwriting was elegant, unfamiliar. Inside was a wedding invitation. Your ex's family? No, an old friend. We haven't talked in a long time. He was there when I got engaged. Then he disappeared when everything went bad. He paused. I think he reached back out because he saw the article about the Monterey summit. There was a photo, you were in it. Tessa blinked. I wasn't even paying attention. I didn't realize there were photographers. I did, he said. But I didn't care. She handed the invitation back. Are you going to go? I don't know, he said. But if I do, I want you with me. She nodded once. Then we go together. Later that afternoon, they walked through the lower floor of Boone Tech's headquarters. The building had an entire level designed like an innovation lab: glass walls, prototype displays, interactive screens. Tessa took it all in, still trying to reconcile the man who sketched bridges at breakfast with the one who owned the floor beneath her feet. You designed this space? She asked, gesturing to a suspended conference pod shaped like a teardrop. Every inch, he replied. I wanted it to feel like possibility. A woman in a graphite blazer appeared from behind a panel of frosted glass. She was tall, poised, and efficient in the way only high-level executive assistants ever were. Mr. Boone, the board meeting's been moved up to this evening. They weren't willing to wait until tomorrow, he nodded. Of course they weren't. Thank you, Elise. As she disappeared, Tessa tilted her head. She doesn't like me. She doesn't like anyone who hasn't been vetted by her personally. Charming, she's impossible to replace. And terrifyingly good at her job. Do I need to be afraid of her? Only if you plan to steal company secrets. Tessa grinned. You think I could, honestly, probably? That night, while Yarden was in the boardroom, Tessa explored the city on her own. She needed to breathe, to feel the pulse of New York without the filter of penthouses and chauffeurs. She ducked into a bookshop in the West Village, wandered through a jazz bar near Soho, and finally ended up on a rooftop garden cafe with twinkling lights and a view of the skyline. Her phone buzzed. Where are you? She tapped a reply, finding my way back to Earth. A pause. Come meet me. I need you here. She hesitated. Then hailed a cab. When she arrived, the lights in the building's top floor were still on. She stepped into the elevator, her reflection wavering in the gold paneling. The doors opened into a lounge outside the boardroom. Yarden was alone, leaning against the edge of a long table. His jacket was off, sleeves rolled, tie undone. He looked tired, but when he saw her, something in his shoulders eased. It went badly, he said. They said I've lost focus, that I'm distracted. That the company needs a leader who doesn't vanish for 4 days without telling anyone. And what do you think? I think I've never been more focused in my life. I just finally remembered what I'm doing this for. She crossed the room, stopping in front of him. Then tell them that. They don't want reasons, they want numbers. Then show them both. He studied her. You believe in me more than anyone in that room. I'm not in love with your board, Yarden, he stilled. Is that what this is? I don't know yet, she said, breath catching. But I know I get it now. Why you don't want to be seen as a headline. Why you held back. I'm not holding anything back anymore. He kissed her harder, needier than before. Not because of desire, but because of desperation, of gratitude, of something that felt dangerously close to surrender. When they pulled apart, he whispered, Stay. I'm already here. The next morning, they flew to Charleston for the wedding. Yarden hadn't returned to the city in years, not since the accident. The house where he'd once planned to raise a family with someone else now belonged to a relative. He showed Tessa the street from the car window but didn't slow down. I don't need to go back there, he said quietly. Not anymore. The ceremony was held in a converted chapel strung with lanterns. The bride was radiant. The groom, Yarden's old friend, froze when he saw them walk in together. After the vows, during the reception, the friend approached. You look different, he said to Yarden. I am. The man glanced at Tessa. She part of the reason? Yarden didn't hesitate. The whole reason. When they returned to their suite that night, Tessa stood on the wraparound balcony looking out at the harbor. You keep turning corners, she said as he joined her. I keep thinking I've seen all of you, and then there's another layer. That scares you? No. It makes me want to keep walking with you. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, not a ring. A key to the penthouse, he said, and everything that comes with it. She took it, heart pounding. You're not asking me to move in. I'm asking you to choose me. In whatever way feels right. Tessa looked down at the key, then back up at him. I already did. A week after Charleston, the key Yarden gave her sat quietly on the marble counter of his penthouse kitchen, untouched but not forgotten. Tessa hadn't moved in. Not officially, her duffel bag still leaned half-zipped near the guest room, but her toothbrush was by his sink. Her favorite tea was in his cabinet, and her shoes had somehow ended up under the edge of his bed. The kind of small, quiet claiming that didn't need declarations. Yarden walked in late from another string of investor meetings, loosened his tie, and dropped his phone face down on the counter as if shielding both of them from the world outside. I'm thinking of stepping back, he said without preamble. Tessa looked up from the open book in her lap, startled. From Boone Tech, not entirely, just shifting the weight, letting my COO take front-facing responsibilities, maybe even appointing a new public director. She set the book aside. You've never said anything like that before. I didn't think I could, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. But now, after Charleston, after you, I don't want to keep living like every moment is a transaction. I want something quieter, realer. Tessa walked to him, folding her arms loosely. Are you sure you're not just reacting? It's easy to want out when you're tired. I'm not tired, he said. I'm awake, for the first time in years. She studied him. And what would you do instead? He exhaled slowly, then motioned for her to follow him. They rode the elevator down to the lower levels of the tower, past the executive suites and innovation labs, to a floor she hadn't seen before. The doors opened to a wide industrial space filled with light. Wooden work tables, drafting boards, and fragments of architectural models filled the room. On the far wall, several canvases leaned against steel shelves as sketches, only now stretched into full-scale concepts. I bought the floor above this one last year. I wanted to build something personal, something unrelated to tech, a design studio. I didn't think I'd ever use it. But lately, I've been coming here at night, drawing. Planning. Tessa stepped deeper into the space, touching the edge of a model bridge flanked by wildflower gardens. This is beautiful. It's a public park concept I've been working on, he said. Mixed-use space, community-driven. I want to fund it myself, no board, no shareholders. Just honest design. She turned to him, brows raised. You want to build something that doesn't make money. I want to build something that makes meaning. Tessa leaned against the edge of the table, watching him. So what happens if you shift your role at Boone Tech? What happens to the empire? It runs just fine without me in the spotlight. I've trained people for years to take over, I just never let them. She nodded once. Then maybe it's time. He walked toward her, stopping close. I don't want to lose this momentum. I've started something new with you, and I don't want it to get swallowed by old patterns. You won't, she said simply, not if you keep choosing to change. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, eyes steady. Come with me to Italy, she blinked. What? There's a design expo in Florence. I've been invited for years but never went. I want to go this time. And I want you to see it with me. The architecture, the gardens, the history, it's everything I've been dreaming about building. She considered him. When? Next week. Tessa laughed softly. You really don't do things halfway, do you? He tilted his head. Would you want me to? No, she said, her voice quiet. I think I like this version of you. 2 days later, they were in Florence. The hotel Yarden chose sat along the Arno River, its terrace draped in wisteria and its balconies opening to views of the Duomo. On their first morning, he took her to a hidden courtyard, cafe tucked behind a museum. They sat beneath lemon trees, drinking espresso and watching artists sketch passers-by. I could stay here forever, she murmured, watching a painter capture a young couple with a baby on his lap. We don't have to go back yet, Yarden said, sliding a folded map of the city between them. There's a villa I want to show you. It's not far from here. I've been considering buying it for the design studio, a satellite space, maybe even a community retreat. I want it to be more than a passion project. I want it to matter. As they walked the cobblestone path to the villa hours later, Tessa looked up at the aged stone walls, the ivy spilling from the windows, and the way the late afternoon sun caught on the terracotta roof tiles. "This place feels like a dream," she said. "It's not," Yarden replied. "It's real, and I want you to be part of it, not just as someone I love, but as someone I want beside me in everything I build from here on out." She turned toward him, heart pounding. "You're saying that like you already know how this ends." He shook his head. "I'm saying it like I'm ready to begin." That night, on the rooftop garden of the villa, with candles flickering between them and the sound of cicadas in the air, Yarden stood and reached into his jacket. He didn't pull out a ring. Instead, he held out a small white envelope with her name written in his handwriting. "What's this?" She opened it slowly. Inside was a document, a proposal to co-found a design initiative under the Boone Foundation. Her name was listed as creative director. "This is real," she whispered. "It's ours," he said. "We'll build it from the ground up. No board, no interference, just you and me and whatever we decide it becomes." Tessa looked up at him, eyes filling. "You want to build something with me? I want to build everything with you." She stepped into his arms, and the kiss that followed was soft, certain, and full of the kind of promise that doesn't need grand words, just truth. 2 months later, the foundation launched. The villa became their first restoration project, part design studio, part artist residency, part community hub. Yarden took a step back from Boone Tech's front lines, staying involved but no longer consumed. Tessa moved in not just into the penthouse, but into every part of his life. And one morning, as she stood barefoot in the villa's courtyard garden, sketching ideas for the next public park project, he appeared behind her with a ring box in his hand. No speeches. No audience. Just them. She didn't need to think. She said yes, not because he was a billionaire, but because she'd rented a room at a seaside resort, and the man who sat beside her at breakfast turned out to be the one who would give her everything she didn't even know she needed. And together, they built something that never needed to be bought. It only needed to be chosen. The late summer air clung warmly to the stone walls of the villa as twilight softened the edges of the world. Tessa reached for the final stack of portfolios, lining them along the long walnut table in the east wing that had become their shared workspace. She'd spent the entire day reviewing sketches from applicants to the new artist residency program they'd launched through the foundation. Every submission told a different story, some wild with color, others precise and aching in their simplicity. Yarden entered quietly, barefoot, a linen shirt half-buttoned and sleeves pushed to his forearms. He moved with ease now, not like the man she'd first met, the one who carried power like an armor. That version had melted away, leaving someone infinitely more dangerous, the man who knew how to be still. "You've been at it all day," he said, setting a plate of figs and honey beside her. "You haven't even touched lunch." "I lost track of time," she admitted. "Some of these artists are extraordinary. There's one from Marseille who built an entire installation using discarded fishing nets and broken window glass. It's like grief suspended midair." He leaned on the table beside her, glancing down at the sketch. "Let's fly him out." "Give him the autumn residency," she smiled. "You don't even want to see the others." "I trust your eye more than mine," he said gently. "Besides, I'm a little distracted." She looked up, brow raised. "By what?" "You. Sitting there with paint on your cheek and making decisions that will change someone's life." Tessa leaned back, stretching. "I never imagined myself doing this. Not really. I always thought I'd just work a decent job, maybe have a cat I barely liked, and leave my sketchbooks half-finished on my nightstand." "You've always been more than your expectations," he said. "You just needed space to see it." She turned to him, voice quieter. "Do you miss it?" "What?" "The noise, the meetings, the chaos of being the center of attention," he considered it. "Sometimes, but only in flashes. Then I remember the espresso machine here doesn't burn the beans and I can walk barefoot through the garden without anyone photographing it. That usually cures me, Tessa reached for his hand. "We did it, didn't we? We actually created something real." His thumb brushed across her knuckles. "We're just beginning." That night, they hosted the first dinner for the new advisory council, a small group of artists, designers, and community leaders they'd brought together to help shape the foundation's next phase. The villa's courtyard glowed with hanging lanterns, and the long table was filled with food grown from the surrounding hills. Laughter echoed, wine flowed, and plans were whispered between bites of rosemary bread and roasted lemon chicken. After the guests left and the staff retreated for the night, Yarden stayed behind to blow out the candles. Tessa wandered into the garden, letting the hush of late evening settle over her. A breeze moved through the olive trees and crickets filled the silence with rhythm. He joined her there, barefoot again, a bottle of wine in one hand and 2 glasses in the other. "I was thinking," he said, pouring. "The space above the studio, the one with the skylight, we should turn it into a library, not just books, sketches, maps, stories. A place where people can leave pieces of themselves behind." She took the glass he offered. "A living archive." "Exactly." They sat on the low stone bench, wine in hand, and looked up at the stars. "I used to think I had to do everything alone," he said. "That if I wasn't pushing, I was failing." "You were never failing, you just didn't know how to stop running." He glanced at her, eyes soft. "And you were the reason I finally did." They didn't speak for a while. The silence between them was full, not empty. Later, as they curled together in bed, she asked, "Do you think we'll ever go back, to the city, to that version of life?" He kissed her temple. "Why would we when we've built this one?" Fall came with golden vines and cooler air, and the first round of resident artists arrived. Tessa ran workshops in the mornings, curated collaborative exhibitions in the evenings. Yarden spent more time sketching again, not for profit, but because it still made his hands feel alive. They worked side by side, not always speaking, but always in sync. One afternoon, she found him in the studio, building a model of a community amphitheater made entirely from reclaimed stone and glass. He looked up as she entered, and the way his face changed when he saw her made her stop mid-step. "What?" she asked, brushing hair from her cheek. He stepped toward her slowly, eyes serious. "I was waiting for the right moment," he said, "but I realized there won't be one, because we've already done the hard part. We've already chosen each other." She swallowed. "Yarden." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring, simple, elegant, a band of gold with a single sapphire set into the center. "Marry me." Her breath caught, not because she hadn't imagined this moment, but because it felt so deeply right, so rooted in everything they'd become together. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Of course I will." They married beneath the olive trees in the courtyard the following spring. No press, no fanfare, just a string quartet, a silk dress without a train, and the people who had become family filling the benches. Yarden wore no tie. Tessa walked barefoot down the stone path. They wrote their own vows, honest, imperfect, and full of the quiet kind of love that doesn't burn fast, but endlessly. He promised to never stop building beside her. She promised to never stop believing in what they could create. When they kissed, the village bells rang in the distance. Afterward, they danced beneath the stars. Not because it was tradition, but because they couldn't not. Years passed quietly, filled with travel, laughter, and the kind of work that mattered. The foundation expanded, taking root in other countries. Artists came and went, each leaving behind a mark. Their home became a sanctuary not just for others, but for themselves. On their 5th anniversary, Tessa stood in the garden, watching their daughter chase butterflies across the lavender rows. Yarden approached from behind, wrapping his arms around her waist. "She has your curiosity," she said. "And your stubborn streak," he replied. They stood in silence, watching their child's joy bloom beneath the sun. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked softly. "What? The life before?" He kissed her shoulder. "Only the moment before I met you. Because everything after that has been exactly where I'm meant to be." And so they stayed, in a life they built with open hands and full hearts, not just in love, but in everything.